You know that quiet moment, late at night, maybe the kids are asleep, the TV's off, and you decide to do a quick financial check-in. You pull up your banking app, your investment account, your 401k, and as all those numbers stare back at you, this one single question just kind of hangs in the air. I mean, on paper, you're doing okay, right? You're not broke, you're definitely not struggling like you were in your 20s, but you don't feel totally secure either. You're living in that weird gray area between, I think I'm fine, and, oh wow, what if I'm actually way behind? And here's the thing. If you're somewhere between, say, 45 and 54, that question, it just lands differently. It's heavier. Retirement is no longer this abstract concept decades away. Nope, it's a real place on the map, maybe just 10 or 15 years down the road. So the real question becomes, are you actually on the right path, or are you just kind of hoping it all works out in the end? You know, most financial advice out there is for young people. Start early, compound interest. And that's great advice, but it's not super helpful when you can practically hear the clock ticking. Because what most people don't realize is that this decade, the one you're in right now, it's the one that pretty much decides everything. It's this weird paradox, right? Your income is probably the highest it's ever been, which is fantastic for saving, but at the same time, your investing window, that runway for compound interest to really work its magic, is getting shorter and shorter. Your margin for error, it has never been this small. A little mistake now can have huge consequences, but on the flip side, a small, smart change can be absolutely life-altering. So to really understand this danger zone, we have to talk about the numbers we all look at, because this is where so many of us get completely sidetracked by one single, very dangerous word: average. Okay, so according to the U.S. Federal Reserve, the average net worth for a household in the 45 to 54 age bracket is just under $1 million. Now, before you either totally panic or start celebrating, just hang on, because for most of us, that number is basically useless. Now look at this, the median net worth, that's the real midpoint, where half of households have more and half have less, is way down here, closer to $350,000. That huge gap between the average and the median, well, it tells a really, really important story. So here's the story those numbers are telling us. The average gets totally warped by a small number of super wealthy households. Think billionaires, pulling that number way, way up. The median, on the other hand, gives us a much more honest look at what a typical household actually has. So if your net worth isn't close to $1 million, guess what? You're not behind. You're normal. But hang on, because this is where it gets even more interesting. Even if you know your number, your total net worth can and often does lie to you. See, the big total sum is way less important than its composition. In other words, how your wealth is actually put together. Let's just imagine two people for a second. Person A has a $900,000 net worth. Looks amazing, right? But look closer. The vast majority of it, $600,000, is tied up in their house. Now, person B's net worth is a third lower, only $600,000. But check this out, $450,000 of that is in retirement accounts. So who's actually in better shape to retire? Yeah, it's person B, and it's not even close. Because here's the blunt truth they don't always tell you. Unless you're planning on selling your house or taking out a reverse mortgage, that home equity isn't going to pay your grocery bills. It's not going to cover your healthcare costs. It's what we call an illiquid asset, and it can give you a dangerously false sense of security. And, our own brains kind of play tricks on us too. We fall into these classic mental traps. First, our lifestyle just magically expands to meet our bigger income, so we never quite feel like we're getting ahead. Then we look at our neighbors with the nice cars and vacations, but we see their success, we don't see their debt. And finally, there's just good old optimism bias, that little voice that says, oh, I'll just work a few more years, it'll be fine. So, all of this leads to one single critical realization. If you're asking, is my net worth average, you're simply asking the wrong question. It's time to completely reframe how we think about this. So, let's toss that old benchmark out and use a much, much better one. I want you to think of this as your retirement checkpoint. It's simple, it's powerful, and it's way more effective. See, the checkpoint isn't about hitting some big, scary number. It's about function. It asks one simple but powerful question: is your money actually set up to generate income and support your life when you're not working anymore? It's a totally different question, isn't it? So here's a simple rule of thumb a lot of financial planners use to gauge this.
By your early 50s, you'll ideally want to have saved somewhere between 5 and 7 times your annual income. So let's say you make $100,000 a year. Your target range would be between $500,000 and $700,000. And listen, this right here is probably the most important part of this entire conversation. That 5 to 7 times target, that is for your investable retirement assets only. We are talking about your 401ks, your IRAs, your brokerage accounts. This number does not include the equity you have in the house you live in. Okay, so now let's get real for a second. The average 401k balance for somebody in their early 50s is under $200,000. Do you see that gap? That massive difference between the target and the reality? That gap is the anxiety that so many people feel, but they can't quite put their finger on why.
All right, if this is hitting a little close to home, that's actually a good thing. It means you're paying attention. Feeling a little uncomfortable right now is a gift because you still have time to do something about it. So let's talk about your first 3 steps to move from just being worried to actually being in control.
So what can you do right now? Let's break it down into 3 immediate actions. First, I want you to literally separate your assets. Make 2 lists. One is your total net worth. The second is just your retirement-ready money. Just getting that clarity is a total game changer. Second, put your energy into increasing your savings rate. Right now, consistency is your superpower, not taking on a bunch of crazy risks. And third, start thinking about protecting your downside. As you get closer to retirement, making sure a big market crash doesn't wipe you out becomes absolutely critical. Look, if you're in this 45 to 54 age range, none of this is about making you feel guilty about the past. It's about giving you control over your future. You are not too late, but you are at the exact moment where getting clear-eyed about this stuff beats just hoping for the best. So I'm going to leave you with this one question to really think about. Forget the total net worth number for a minute. Just ask yourself this. If you stopped working in 10 or 15 years, what would your money actually do for you? How much income could it realistically generate month after month, year after year? Answering that question, that's where the theory stops and your real retirement plan begins.